is Brian Elliott. I am the executive director for the Service Employees International Union Minnesota State Council. And what that means is that for part of my work, I spend a lot of time focused on passing good policies for workers at the state capitol and at the city level. And so, what I want to talk to you about is a bill that just passed the legislature that is expected to be signed into law any day that will create minimum standards for rideshare drivers. And we've been really happy to be a part of the effort to get this passed with drivers, with driver organizations, with legislators and city council members and the governor. And what it means is that starting on December 1st of this year, drivers for rideshare companies will have a minimum compensation that you are entitled to. And so the numbers are going to be on the screen here. And what that compensation is you're entitled to at least $5 for every trip, but more, presumably, because there is a 31 cents per minute and $1.28 per mile minimum compensation, which goes up if you have a wheelchair accessible vehicle. The per mile goes from $1.28 up 91 cents to $2.19 per mile if you have a wheelchair accessible vehicle. And as I said, these go into effect on December 1st. And on that date, a typical driver in Minnesota will make about $4 an hour minimum more than the typical driver did in 2022, driving a typical number of trips per hour, average length trips, all of that. $4 an hour is enormous. I've never seen something that big happen just over a 2-year period from 2022 to 2024 in policy. The closest thing I've ever seen is when Minneapolis and St. Paul raised their minimum wages, but that was over a period of 6 or 7 years. So, in addition, these numbers are going to go up starting January 1st, 2027, by the same percentage that the minimum wage goes up, and they'll go up every year by that percentage. In addition, drivers are entitled to 80% of any cancellation fees that the rideshare companies charge to riders when they cancel a trip. And of course, drivers are still entitled to 100% of their tips. In order to know that you're getting what you are entitled to, rideshare companies are going to need to provide daily and weekly summaries of your trips so that you can compare to make sure that what they say you earned is actually what you should have earned or expected to earn. And they also have to provide information in the assignment notice when you are offered a ride by the rideshare companies that tells you not only how long the trip is expected to take with the passenger, but also how long it's expected to take and the number of miles to get to the pickup. There are also important protections against deactivation, including a requirement that the rideshare companies tell you as a driver what violations could cause a deactivation. If the rideshare companies deactivate you mistakenly and they didn't intend to, or they didn't have reason to deactivate you, they have to compensate you for the time you were deactivated. And when you're deactivated, if you're deactivated, they need to provide you with the reason you were deactivated, how to get reactivated, and what is the appeals process to get reactivated. And that appeals process requires that you have 30 days to appeal. It gives the rideshare companies 15 to 30 days to reply at most. It allows drivers to be represented by a driver advocacy organization or by an attorney. And there will be an additional 90-day window that opens up somewhere around the beginning of June 2024 for people who were previously deactivated back as far as January 1st, 2021 to get reactivated and to appeal their deactivation. In order to actually be deactivated and stay deactivated, the rideshare company actually has to show with evidence that a violation is more likely to have happened than not. In addition to all of that, there is a new insurance requirement for the rideshare companies to provide $1 million of personal injury insurance, $1 million policy. So that's $1 million per incident up to, for all the time between accepting a ride, picking up the rider, and dropping off the rider, as well as time after you've reached the destination to drop off the rider before you leave for your next location. That is now going to be covered through personal injury insurance that is not going to cost the riders, or sorry, that is not going to cost the drivers. And the rideshare companies are going to have to pay for that themselves. That additional insurance will be effective January 1st of 2025. Lastly, you may have heard that you might have heard about the arbitration agreements that most people are required to agree to when they sign up with the rideshare companies. The rideshare companies are now going to need to tell drivers about any arbitration agreements and give drivers an opportunity to opt out of those so that you can use the courts if the rideshare companies are violating this law. But the law will also be enforced by the state, by the Department of Labor and Industry, who enforce other minimum wage, workplace safety, and other workplace laws. Now, this law did prevent Minneapolis from being able to pass their own rideshare driver compensation law, but the work that Minneapolis did, I believe, really pushed the rideshare companies and the state to get to a higher number statewide. And so this new number that I talked about for compensation applies statewide. And as I said, no law is perfect. Every law can be changed and improved. And if we need to, we can do that next year. But more importantly, just because the law stops cities from being able to set their own driver compensation, that does not mean that workers can't join together in a union and bargain for higher compensation. A union doesn't require that a driver be an employee. If drivers are employees, they're covered by federal labor law, but the state can create the ability to form a union of drivers even if you are not considered employees of the rideshare companies. And that is something that the legislature could do as early as next year. And you would have the ability to organize yourselves into a union and fight for what you wanted, even if that meant you wanted higher compensation in Minneapolis and St. Paul because the state law can only tell the cities and counties what they can do, and it can't tell you as drivers what you want, what you can bargain for and have agreed to in a contract. So if you have questions, please reach out and contact your organizer at Local 26, Ibrahim Noor. And thank you for all the work that you have done to increase compensation for yourself and for other drivers all over the state. Thank you.